Would you be my wife for a single day? The human billionaire CEO asked. The alien Waitress Helix Spire floated between three-star lanes like a jewel that had forgotten who owned it. Ships of every size drifted in and out, carrying traders, diplomats, mercenaries, and beings whose names had no human sounds. The station smelled of recycled air, warm metal, and 100 kinds of food mixed together. It was loud, busy, and always watching. Elias Crane sat alone at a wide table made from real wood, an expensive choice on a station where most things were printed or recycled. He looked like a man who belonged anywhere he chose to sit. His dark suit was simple but perfect, tailored for low gravity and long days. A thin data band rested against his wrist, quietly showing numbers only he could see. Those numbers represented companies, markets, futures, and risks spread across half the known galaxy. To most people, Elias Crane was a legend, a human who had built one of the largest interstellar logistics empires in less than 20 years, a billionaire many times over, a man whose name appeared in trade disputes, political arguments, and economic studies. To the station staff, he was just another high-value customer, though one they treated with careful respect. Across the dining hall, Sailari balanced a tray with practiced ease. Her movements were smooth, shaped by years of learning how to be unnoticed and efficient at the same time. She belonged to a species called the Lethari, tall and slim, with soft blue-gray skin and eyes that reflected light like polished stone. Thin ridges curved gently along the sides of her head, a sign of her people, often mocked by others who did not bother to learn their meaning. She wore the standard server uniform adjusted to fit her body shape. It was clean but old, patched more times than she could count. As she moved between tables, she listened without trying to hear. Rich traders argued about tariffs. Pilots complained about docking fees. A pair of off-world nobles laughed too loudly, throwing scraps of food onto the floor without noticing who would clean it later. Sailari had learned long ago that noticing too much could be dangerous. Her people had once held respected roles as mediators and cultural advisors, but after a series of political failures not entirely their fault, the Lethari had been quietly pushed down the social ladder. Now, many of them worked in service roles, trusted to smile, serve, and stay silent. She approached Elias' table when his glass indicator glowed softly. "May I refresh your drink?" she asked, her voice calm and polite. Elias looked up from his data band. For a brief moment his eyes sharpened as if he were reading more than just her words. Then he nodded. "Yes, please, the same." She placed the glass down without spilling a drop. "Thank you," Elias said. His tone was neutral but not dismissive. That alone made him different from many customers. As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "You're Lethari, correct?" "Interesting." He was not looking for threats. He was studying people, patterns, reactions. It was the look of someone used to seeing systems instead of individuals. When her shift ended, Sailari was clearing a nearby table when Elias stood and approached the service counter. He paid without checking the total and waited while she processed the transaction. "You handled the room well," he said casually. "Thank you, sir." Sailari's hands froze over the counter. She searched his face for mockery, for hidden cameras, for the sharp edge of a joke she would regret not understanding. She found none. "I'm sorry," she said. "I think I misunderstood." Proposals like that were not romantic things among the stars. They were legal traps, political weapons, or social games played by those with power. Her people had suffered enough from such games. "That is not appropriate," she said, choosing her words with care. "And I am working. I am seeking a legal, time-limited marriage contract, lasting exactly one standard day. No physical expectations. No deception beyond what the law permits. In exchange, I will provide compensation and protection that could materially benefit you and your people." "Why me? You do not know me. Why does a human billionaire need a fake wife for one day?" "I know," Elias replied. That's why I'm not asking a politician. If I say no, she asked, what happens? And the comfort of being underestimated. Why do I feel like this is not really about the marriage? She asked. Elias met her gaze. Because it is. She saw a man under pressure, standing at the edge of something that could either change everything or destroy him. I will not be owned, she said firmly. You won't be, Elias replied without hesitation. Not for a second. Around them, life continued, unaware that a quiet decision was forming between a billionaire and a waitress. I will consider it, Selari said at last. That's all I ask, Elias replied. As he turned to leave, she realized something that made her pulse quicken. For the first time in a long while, the galaxy was not ignoring her. It was waiting to see what she would do next. Selari did not sleep after her shift ended. She returned to her small rented unit near the lower rings of Helix Spire, but rest would not come. The room was narrow, built for function, not comfort. A single light panel glowed softly on the ceiling. She sat on the edge of her sleeping platform, the data slate Elias had given her resting in her hands like a weight. She activated it. The contract opened slowly, layered with explanations written in clear, simple language. That surprised her. Most legal documents were designed to confuse. This one seemed designed to be understood. It explained the duration of the marriage, exactly one standard day. It explained her rights, her authority, and her protections. It explained that she could withdraw at any time before the ceremony. It explained that there were no personal obligations beyond public appearance and legal acknowledgement. Still, the risks were there. Public attention, political anger, corporate enemies who would not care that she was only a waitress. She scrolled further, her eyes widening when she reached the section labeled Potential Outcomes. If the clause was triggered successfully, Elias Crane would gain control of a disputed interstellar logistics network. In return, the governing charter required measurable benefits to at least one non-dominant species. Not charity, structural change. Selari swallowed. She understood then why he had chosen her, not just because she was unexpected, but because her people qualified. The Lethari were officially listed as a culturally diminished participant species. It was a polite phrase that hid generations of exclusion. Her communicator chimed softly, an incoming message from her younger brother, still living on a Lethari habitat far from the main trade lanes. She hesitated, then accepted the call. His face appeared, tired but smiling. "You're awake late," he said. "So are you," she replied. He shrugged. "Power cycle issues again. They say repairs are coming." The galaxy had taught her people to survive by staying small, by avoiding attention, by not believing in offers that sounded too large. And yet, the next morning she requested leave from her supervisor. The older Krellin woman eyed her with suspicion but approved it. Good staff were hard to replace. Selari spent the day meeting with an independent legal advisor, just as Elias had suggested. The advisor was a neutral artificial intelligence approved by station law, incapable of loyalty to any one species. It reviewed the contract line by line. "This agreement is unusually balanced," the AI said. "The human party has limited his own authority more than is typical. Likely because the clause he seeks requires demonstrable good faith," the AI replied. "Power taken without trust would invalidate the outcome." Elias requested a meeting in a private observation chamber overlooking the docking lanes. When Selari arrived, she found him standing with his hands behind his back, watching ships arrive and depart. "You came," he said, turning. "I have not agreed," she replied. "I know." "It won't." The hum of the station filled it. "What happens after the day ends?" she asked. "That depends," Elias replied, "on how people react, and on what you decide you want. If you only bet when you're sure, you never change the game." Elias Crane intended to enter a temporary marriage contract with a private citizen of Helix Spire in accordance with legacy charter law. The galaxy reacted instantly. Stock prices wavered. Political forums exploded with speculation. Commentators mocked the idea. Others were angry. Many assumed it was a trick. When Selari's name was released, the reaction turned sharp. A Lethari, a waitress. Someone with no visible power, her communicator flooded with messages, some supportive, many cruel, some threatening. Station security quietly increased patrols near her residence. Elias assigned a small protection detail, discreet but constant. He did not ask permission. He informed her. "I don't want to be hidden," she told him. "You won't be," he said. "But you won't be harmed either." It is acknowledgement. The ceremony itself was simple by design. A legal union performed in a neutral chamber, witnessed by representatives of 3 major trade blocs and recorded for public access. Elias wore a formal suit bearing no corporate symbols. Selari wore attire inspired by Lethari tradition, flowing lines and muted colors that shifted softly with movement. When they stood together, the contrast was obvious. Human and alien, power and service, wealth and survival, the officiator began the formal words. When Selari spoke her acceptance, her voice was steady. When Elias responded, the chamber's sensors recorded a measurable shift in biometric data. He was nervous. That fact surprised many observers later. As the ceremony concluded, the legal systems of multiple species activated. The clause was triggered. The day began. Almost immediately, they were ushered into their first joint appearance, a closed-door negotiation with rival corporate leaders who had expected Elias to arrive alone. The room was tense. Eyes moved to Selari, then away. "This is highly irregular," one delegate said coldly. "So is attempting to lock essential trade routes behind monopoly law," Elias replied evenly. They spoke over each other at first. Accusations flew. Selari listened. She did not interrupt. Then she spoke. "May I ask a question?" she said. The room stilled, more from surprise than respect. She looked at the delegates. "You speak of efficiency, of profit, of stability. Have any of you calculated the cost of excluding entire populations from trade? What would you know of?" A voice it had ignored was finally being heard. The meeting did not end with agreement, but it ended with something just as important. It ended with uncertainty. The rival delegates left the room quieter than they had entered, their confidence cracked. Selari felt it as they passed her, their eyes no longer dismissive but cautious. Elias noticed it too. As the doors closed, he let out a slow breath. "You shifted the balance," he said. "I only spoke what was true," Selari replied. "That is usually enough," Elias said. "It just takes the right moment." Every word recorded. News feeds across the galaxy replayed images of them walking side by side through the station. Commentators argued about motives. Some claimed Elias was manipulating sympathy. Others accused Selari of ambition, of betrayal of her class. A few voices, quieter but growing, asked different questions. Why had it taken a human billionaire marrying a Lethari for one day to make people listen? Their next stop was a trade council forum, broadcast live. The council members sat in a wide circle, representing different species and interests. Selari felt the weight of the room press down on her as she took her seat beside Elias. A counselor from a dominant species spoke first. "This union is symbolic," he said, "but symbols do not move cargo or balance markets." Selari continued before anyone could interrupt. "When my people mediated disputes," she said, "we were taught to listen for what was not said. Fear, shame, loss. Those things do not appear in profit reports, but they shape every decision you make. Humans have not. I believe this marriage exposes what you have ignored." The clause required proof of benefit, not promises. Selari's words were becoming evidence. Between events, they were given a short break in a secure lounge. Selari sat heavily, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Elias poured water for both of them. "You okay?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "I did not expect this many people to listen." "That's why it's working." A coordinated attempt was underway to crash several supply routes tied to Elias' network. It was legal, barely. A warning shot. They are trying to force a failure during the day, the aide said. If key routes destabilize, the clause could be challenged. Why? Within minutes, messages were sent not through official corporate channels but through local trade networks. Elias authorized temporary autonomy for regional operators, many of them from minor species. They were given authority to reroute, negotiate, and adapt without waiting for central approval. It was risky. It went against every standard corporate practice. The response was immediate. Small fleets adjusted paths, local leaders coordinated, old favors were called in. Routes stabilized not because of force but because people chose to make them work. Across the galaxy, analysts watched in disbelief as the attempted disruption failed. The system is behaving like a living thing, one commentator said. It should not be possible. It is possible, he said. You just have to trust it. A formal challenge questioning Salari's legal standing to influence the clause's outcome. It cited her occupation, her lack of formal education, her species' diminished status. Salari read it silently. They are attacking you directly, Elias said. I can respond. If you believe my voice should not matter, then you must explain why the law allowed it to matter in the first place. He spoke of markets and systems, of growth and responsibility. Then he stepped back. Salari did not raise her voice. She did not need to. I was born on a habitat that most of you could not find on a map, she said. I was taught to serve, not to speak. Today I stood in rooms where decisions are made. Not because I am special, but because the system allowed it. The legal systems finalized their calculations. The clause was satisfied. Control of the disputed network transferred to Elias' company with binding requirements for inclusive governance and measurable benefits to non-dominant species. The day ended. The marriage contract expired. In a quiet chamber, Elias and Salari stood facing each other. No cameras, no audience. It's over, Salari said. The contract is, Elias replied. The consequences are not. Outside, Helix Spire continued to turn, carrying the echo of a single day that had proven something the galaxy had long forgotten. That power did not always come from the top. Sometimes, it rose from the place no one thought to look. The morning after the contract ended did not feel quiet. It felt heavy. Helix Spire looked the same from the outside, ships moving in steady lines, lights blinking in familiar patterns. Inside, everything had changed. Salari woke in the same small room she had always lived in, but her communicator was already flashing with unread messages. She lay still for a moment, listening to the soft hum of the station. Yesterday, the galaxy had listened to her. Today, it would decide what to do about it. She sat up and began sorting the messages. Many were from Lethari communities. Some thanked her, some were afraid. Some begged her to stop before things became worse. A few blamed her for drawing attention that might bring punishment. There were other messages too, invitations from trade councils, requests for interviews. Warnings written in careful language that promised consequences without naming them. Salari closed her eyes. She had known this would happen. Still, knowing did not make it easier. Across the station, Elias Crane stood in a secure briefing room surrounded by advisors and legal specialists. None of them were relaxed. The transfer is complete, one analyst said. But the opposition is reorganizing. They're challenging secondary provisions, slowing implementation, looking for pressure points. Residency reviews, employment audits, nothing illegal on its own. That sounds like her. No, the supervisor said, but the station administration has concerns. The job she had used to survive was gone, at least for the moment. She felt an unexpected sense of relief mixed with fear. She wandered the station, ending up in a quiet observation area. Stars drifted slowly beyond the glass. For the first time since the ceremony, she allowed herself to feel tired. Her communicator chimed. Elias. I heard, he said when she accepted the call. I expected it, she replied. I can fix this, Elias said. There are positions, advisory roles, public appointments. She thought about it, about her people, about the messages she had received, about the weight of being seen. "I want time," she said, "and space to choose." A coalition of powerful interests filed formal complaints against the inclusive governance rules now tied to Elia's network. They argued inefficiency, instability, risk. Behind closed doors, pressure mounted. Elia's was called before a high-level economic council. The chamber was cold and formal. "You have disrupted long-standing systems," one counselor said. "And for what?" A symbolic gesture. She was not announced officially, but word spread fast. When she arrived, she was met not with celebration, but with worried faces. Elders gathered in a simple meeting hall. The air smelled of familiar spices and recycled water. Selari stood before them, feeling smaller than she had on any broadcast. "You have brought danger," one elder said bluntly. "I know," Selari replied. "You have also brought hope," another said. "That is sometimes worse." "Then help me decide how to be seen." Critics blamed Elia's reforms. Commentators questioned whether empowering local operators had made routes vulnerable. Elias watched the reports grimly. "They're escalating. And now they're waiting to see if we retreat." Elias spoke first, condemning the attack, promising accountability. Then Selari stepped forward. "You are trying to teach us a lesson," she said to the unseen attackers. "That cooperation is weakness. That shared power invites chaos. That systems fail when only a few are allowed to protect them." Elia's personal wealth dropped sharply. An advisor confronted him. "You could step back. Let the reforms slow. Protect what you've built." "You're paying a high price," she said. "So are you," he replied. She stood beside him. "Do you regret asking me?" "So am I." Weeks passed, and the galaxy learned that the new systems did not collapse as predicted. They bent. They adjusted. They held. Supply routes rerouted faster than before. Local operators shared information openly. Small species, once ignored, began to speak in trade councils with cautious confidence. Not everyone was pleased. A formal vote was called by a coalition of major powers to review and possibly suspend the inclusive governance rules tied to Elias Crane's network. The vote would not only decide the future of his company, but also set a precedent for how much influence non-dominant species could hold. Selari watched the announcement in silence. "This is it," she said. Elias nodded. They won a final test. Not dramatic, steady. The night before the vote, Selari stood in her old observation spot. Stars slid past like quiet witnesses. Elias joined her, hands clasped behind his back. "No matter what happens tomorrow," he said, "this already changed things. If they strip the reforms away, will you fight? They place critical infrastructure in inexperienced hands." "It did not. I am here because I was invited by people who were finally allowed to participate." "You ask who should be trusted with the systems that keep the galaxy alive. I ask who has been carrying those systems quietly all this time. Now trust us to help decide how it is done." Analysts spoke of a turning point, not a revolution, something slower, harder to stop. Afterward, Elias stood alone for a moment, staring at the vote results. His shoulders sagged slightly, the weight finally catching up to him. Selari approached. "You did it," she said. "We did," Elias replied. The days that followed were busy but different. The danger did not vanish, but it changed shape. Opposition turned cautious. Quiet negotiations replaced open attacks. Offers came to Selari, roles in councils, advisory positions, speaking invitations. She refused most of them. Instead, she chose something smaller. With Elia's support but not his control, she helped establish an independent mediation network staffed by members of minor species, not powerful enough to threaten empires, strong enough to prevent small disputes from becoming large ones. It was slow work, often frustrating, but it mattered. Elias, for his part, stepped back from some public roles. His wealth never fully recovered, but his influence changed. He became known not as the richest human, but as the one who broke a pattern. Months later, Helix Spire marked the anniversary of the day that had started it all, not officially. No ceremonies, just conversations. Celari returned to the dining hall where she had once worked. The wood table was still there. She ran her hand along its surface, remembering. Elias joined her, wearing a simpler suit than before. "Strange, isn't it?" he said. "How one question can change everything." They sat together not as symbols, not as leaders, but as people who had chosen to trust each other when it mattered. Across the galaxy, changes continued. Not dramatic, not perfect, but real. Humanity's role in it was discussed in many ways. Some praised human adaptability. Others criticized human disruption. But one truth became hard to deny. Humans did not always win by conquering or controlling. Sometimes they won by listening. And sometimes the most powerful thing a human could do was ask an unexpected question and mean it. The galaxy remembered that, and it was no longer the same.